the time we were Miss Spitzer, right?
Miss Spitzer,
Yeah,
Spitzer class.
yeah. We're like,
And we're trying to get credits, you know.
we've always been good citizens, guys.
No, but it's like, come to think of it, like, I'm trying to think of why exactly I wanted credits at the
the
time.
service badge. We wanted
service
the
badge.
service scroll, and we.
But like, you need a lot of credits for that.
Yeah,
right?
we
And the
did
kind
like
of credits
30.
that you get at a place like the library is not enough.
It's like 3, wasn't it?
We were getting 3 and we were hoping for 10.
Yeah.
We thought we were going to build the 10 up to 200. So that didn't go well.
Yeah, it didn't. But actually, I need to say, like, during that period, I started reading a lot more books, which was really good because I think that's the period where I read the most books in my life because you just had this time after school and you had books available and you were there. So it didn't go to waste. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a good use of our Monday afternoon.
Yeah. Thinking about it, I actually feel like it was weird. Like, why were we doing that? Actually?
That's how I was trying to think about like the intention, but trying to gun for a service scroll, it's worth it. You know, it's like someone playing a sport to get the colors, or doing well to get an academic scroll, or
Yeah.
But what I find interesting about that experience was that because we did it at the same time as detention, we were always confused for staying for detention.
For detention, and people would be confused. How are you guys in detention? Well, not you, man. Nobody was confused about you. Nobody was confused about you.
I'm catching stray bullets.
Maybe Lloyd and I, because people didn't see us as like the kind that will stay for detention.
Yeah, it was an
But
interesting time.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to Untapped Azania. My name is Maureen, and we're back with another episode. I was kind of confused on which camera to look at for a second, but I'm back on here. Of course, my name is Maureen, and this week we're doing things a little bit different. As you can see, we don't have Mesh sitting on my right. We have somebody else. We'll get to his introduction a little bit later on, but we're so grateful to be back with another episode. I'm so thankful that we get to do this again. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, tell us what you're tapped into. We'll get into that. And we'll also kind of give our views if you let us know. Because rote aridivi, if we all share, we know something. All right. Let's get into it. We have, I think last week, we had a chat about tax, and it came through when we were talking about the Makazi situation and how she kind of struggled with SARS. Yeah, she struggled with SARS, and now she kind of has to pay back, and she went to the BETs. So we were like, it's tax season. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to learn something. So we brought our good friend here, Lloyd. A lot of the people that we know probably know him from high school. We went to high school with him, but he's also a tech specialist. And it's great to actually have friends that are connected.
And a chartered accountant.
Oh, and a CASA, sorry, I need to add that. It's also CASA. It's great to have people that, you know, have connections, know something, so that they can come chill with us and kind of educate us. Lloyd, how are you doing? What's happening?
I'm great, doing well. I'm excited to actually be part of this podcast.
Of course. I mean, nobody watches this podcast, but I'm excited for all of us that we're here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mesh, how you doing? What's happening as a ghost?
I'm cozy. I'm happy we finally have our first guest. It's great that it had to be Lloyd. You know, we have a lot of memories. Even the pod started with like a memory. If we went through memory lane, we'd probably talk about a lot. So yeah, it's great. Great Friday, great weather, great energy. So yeah.
I actually was just thinking about how like the weather is great, but we're not out of winter yet, so it's giving a summery vibe, but we're not out of winter yet. So it's great to be South African, I guess. We're back here. I do want to start off with what we've been tapped into for the past couple of
mini introduction. I mean, Lloyd is a formal guy, so let him introduce himself how he would
Lloyd, please introduce yourself. Also, just to add, I'm a little bit corporate today to just match Lloyd's energy because for my leads.
All right, thanks, Maureen. So Lloyd is a chartered accountant. I'm also a tax specialist. So I'm a registered tax representative. So I help people with their tax affairs, So I run a small consulting company called Posaito Consulting Services, and that's where I really help more individuals, SMMEs, with managing their tax affairs, also assisting with more financial accounting type of work, as well as some business advisory there and there. I'm a person who is very interested in learning and development. I'm particularly passionate. That's a passion for me. So I love sharing knowledge, and I love getting people more empowered and more knowledgeable on things that I know.
Okay, that's interesting. And it's nice because we are here to learn. Today we want to learn. You said you have a consulting company. Please just say the name again so that people can check you out and, go into it if they want your services later on after this.
It's called Posaito Consulting Services. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, I think on Twitter as well. So you can follow us there. We also have a website, posaito.co.za.
Okay, great.
Posaito.
Is that in Chivenda? Is that what's
Posaito.
Put your eye on it.
Yeah. It's a compound word that I like to do or translate to say, take cognizance.
Ooh, okay.
I kind of interpreted it as put your eye on it.
Yeah.
You get me? Which is so powerful, put your eye on it.
I took it literally. I was just like, Posaito, just being like, look into it or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what we aim to do. We aim to bring about more knowledge about finances, particularly in SMMEs and many people that don't have a formal finance background.
That's interesting, especially where you touched about people that don't have a lot of financial background, because I think a lot of not just young people, but even older people struggle with this aspect of life. It's always a struggle that you try, even from the basics of budgeting or trying to look into the future. People struggle with that kind of stuff. So it's nice to actually have somebody who is interested in that, because a lot of us even are scared of that topic. We don't even want to think about it. When we think about looking into our bank statements, we start tatazilling there. So it's nice to actually have somebody who is interested in that and is willing to actually help us and is young, so we can chill in bin bags like this and actually have a formal, informal conversation about it. So welcome to the Untapped space. This is a little dojo. It's very comfortable. Please be calm. We're not going to do anything serious except speak tech stuff, I guess. Okay, just to get into the show, though, let's just talk about what you've been tapped into. Mesh, I'm going to start with you.
I guess, yeah. Oh, should I start so he kind of understands the gist of it?
Yeah.
Right? And I'm a ghost. So, a lot. So I'll just try summarize it as much as I possibly can. But most recently, Mandisa Maya, the first, what is it? Chief Justice. First
that's
female Chief Justice.
Came out
so
yesterday or so.
that was something great. Thought that was something great. The CrowdStrike. So in the South African context, that's something that affected Capitec. So CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company. So they work with Microsoft. So if you notice, Capitec had a problem, I think last week Friday, where it was off for a few hours. So that was the whole CrowdStrike saga. It affected quite a lot of companies in the world. So, I mean, I feel like that was significant for me because I'm an advocate for self-sovereignty. I imagine a world where people can, if they choose to, own their data, own everything to do, because we're moving more into a world where that belongs to someone else, right? Credit unions are able to marginalize you in the credit space. So with a situation like CrowdStrike, it was one person that probably made a mistake, wrote a wrong line of code, right? Probably failed at fixing a bug, and it affected a lot of companies, right? So the bandwagon effect of that was quite bad. And I think it's something we need to just reflect on in terms of the big conversation on centralization versus decentralization, where a single entity is responsible for so much versus a lot of entities or a bunch of everyone being responsible for themselves. So that was significant because of that. 2 days ago, the Ethereum, so the first alternative cryptocurrency outside of Bitcoin, got an ETF, a spot ETF. So now, like normal corporate companies, the SEC approved it, can have an ETH ETF. So BlackRock, the biggest asset manager, has one, and 8 other like big asset managers, predominantly alternative, but you do have like a traditional one like BlackRock launching their own ETH spot ETF. So I think that's significant. Kind of covered it for Onyx. I'll attach a little article on that goes into it. Also UBI. We also had something recent on universal basic income because we've been talking about it a lot. Also covered that, so I'll attach a link. But that was more a study by Open Research, which was funded by OpenAI, ironically, right? And we always talk about universal basic income being this important thing because of jobs getting automated. So OpenAI being sort of at the forefront with ChatGPT of the AI revolution, were a company that funded a study with about 3,000 people. So there was obviously the recipients, and then there was, the study was divided into 2. So there were the recipients that got $1,000. So that was a third of the 3,000, so 1,000 people. And then 2,000 people, which were like another sort of case study in the case study. Forgot what they were called, but those individuals only got $50. So those were 2,000 out of the 3,000. And the findings were interesting. So I wrote a bit about the different things, the positives, the negatives. I like how Sam Altman, this founder of OpenAI that funded the study, talked about like the study and it being sort of a yardstick for for ending poverty, right? He acknowledged that can't be the only thing, right? And we always talk about how it's dehumanizing for people to not work and just be a useless class and just be handed out. So the 1,000 people were getting $1,000 a month. That's about 19,000 rand. $50, about 900 rand. And yeah, the outcomes were interesting. I mean, one of the most interesting positives was the fact that people were more interested in pursuing other things. So there was more business interest that came out, but the resources were just not enough to pursue it, which was the negative, where it was like, now you have a bit of freedom so you can think a bit more, but you're limited in terms of your ability to execute on it because you just don't have enough resources. It takes a lot more than just $1,000. So, but yeah, people went to see dentists a lot more. That's an interesting thing that came out. Yeah.
Why would
but
that
not
be the
but the
case?
healthcare, sort of the kind of places they went for healthcare did not change. Kind of the standard was the same. It's not like they went into better facilities. But I think because they were more cognizant, they just had a bit more freedom. They're like, let me,
That's
get my teeth
interesting.
checked.
'Cause
Yeah.
I would think, like, if you're in that kind of situation, you'd probably want to check your mental health a little bit more. Because you're more relaxed, you're more in touch with what's going on with your mind, and you're like trying to maybe figure out.
People
where
usually
you're
go for
at.
therapy when they are going through a mess. So I mean, if you have money, then you're in a good space. So you wouldn't necessarily, for the most part, want to. If someone's giving you 19,000 rand a month, you're not going to spend it on going to therapy. You're happy. You don't
you're
need
not doing
therapy.
anything.
Like people, like therapy is. I think therapy is good even if you're in a good space.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that society, for the most part, right, people go to a therapist or a psychologist when they are going through the most.
Got it. I was just thinking that, like, because you're not doing anything, you know what I mean? Like, you're stuck. Or maybe you're not stuck because you have a lot of money, so you could do a lot with it. But I was just thinking that because you're just sitting down, there has to be a lot that happens in your mind.
Just tap into more of your interests. So if you like painting, then you can buy a canvas and paint instead of just doing your corporate job.
Interesting.
You have more freedom to do things that interest you. If you like going to the market, you go to the market more. But you're not going for most people, for the average person, they're not going to spend that on their wealth. They're not going to sign up to a gym.
That's actually interesting because I saw a TikTok video of somebody complaining about gym prices and why they're so expensive and the weird contract that you actually have to sign up for that. So that's interesting.
I'm gonna try
Is
keep
that-
going. I just have a few more.
Oh my word!
Biden.
Keep going, fam.
Biden, the presidential.
Oh yeah, you've been hating on
the US
Biden,
presidential
low-key,
race. So
fam.
I, you remember when I said I think there's a shadow government?
Yeah.
I mean, now it's clear, right?
sure, yeah.
I mean, why would he have to step down if he's competent?
True.
Right.
But I mean, we could all see, man. We could all
there's
see
a
that there
cognitive
was
decline happening.
Yeah.
So I think on the other end, I was just thinking about how this was strategic in that if they announced that Biden wasn't going to run for the next election, then they were going to have like a primary,
Okay.
right, where different candidates
Okay.
debate and stuff. Now it's
Okay.
too late for that. They're just gonna choose whoever they want to sort of run, right? I thought that Michelle Obama was going to be the chosen one for some reason, because I just thought that she's probably the only person that could go against Trump now, given like the
thing that
shooting and like that is his superhero moment. Because most right wing people aren't that interested in like the intricacies of the like to do with the individual. They're more interested in the sort of clout around.
sure.
They're not fact
I mean, there were
checkers.
videos of him like going out on like a 50 Cent soundtrack and people making
You
fun
know, so
of that.
that's
making-
that he got the streets.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like, so for me, I thought Michelle, because they sort of tried to do the same thing with Hillary a few years ago, where it was like the Bill Clinton sort of playbook. Let's put his wife on and maybe it'll work. It failed. I thought they wanted to try it again with Barack and now Michelle. But I saw Barack and Michelle Obama endorsed Kamala Harris, right? I don't think she
So
can
you
beat
didn't see
Trump.
Miss Harris coming at all?
I thought they were gonna they weren't going to endorse her. I did kind of know
I
that.
mean, endorsement and actually her getting the street cred is a little bit different because
Yeah,
that
yeah.
endorsement
Yeah,
comes
that's
from different
different.
people. Like the endorsement that she needs to
Yeah.
actually run comes from different people, whereas the streets could possibly feel differently about her.
But if she was only going to go off of that, right, it was going to be she's a black woman, right, which is
Yeah.
not something you want to run on. America's predominantly white, right? And in
Yeah.
as much as the black vote, I feel like you're better off getting if we're thinking about it from the democratic standpoint, they're better off getting the black vote if they already have sort of a segment of the white. I mean, they probably do have a segment of the white vote. They have LGBTQ because the right wing is clearly not for that. They have their initiatives where they garner support. But Kamala running just off of I'm a
Yeah.
black woman and like not off of like merit, because you need to think of the fact that she did not debate, she did not contest anyone.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
that someone else could have been better than her. RFK Jr. is running as an independent, like Kanye did, and we know in America, like
Yeah, that
no one
doesn't
really pays attention
yeah.
to the sort of centrist type. It's two extremes. So he would probably, his family is traditionally Democratic, so he would probably run. He would have probably ran as a Democrat. I think he had a chance against Trump. But yeah, there's been a whole situation around like Silicon Valley bros. So these are like rich tech bros.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see rich tech billionaires or multimillionaires fight, right? Because you're like, everyone has problems. Everyone has problems. So what happened is there's a startup called Zenefits.
Okay.
So if you search the Zenefits saga, you can come across articles about the startup a few years ago where they used to take drugs in the office. So it was like that startup,
Was it like a
the
billionaire
traditionally,
episode type of thing?
yeah, the traditionally startup-y environment, like that you just don't think really happens in real life. But there were drugs involved, there were parties involved and stuff, and apparently there was a course that they had to take, some of the employees, and what they ended up doing was they sort of created an algorithm to complete the code for them, like a verification. Say you're working as an IT specialist,
shucks.
you need a sort of a verification for Azure or AWS, and then you automate getting the verification, and then you work with people so there was sort of what ended up happening from the two different camps, because there was David Sachs, which is, people know him as like a PayPal mafia. He's one of the guys that came from PayPal with your Elon Musks, and he was one of the PayPal main guys. And a guy that was named Parker Conrad, who was the CEO. So these guys didn't like each other, but they were working for the same company, Zenefits. I think David Sachs was more COO. So there was sort of a hostile takeover that took place from Conrad's side. Like that was his narrative. From Sachs' side, it's like, no, Conrad is a druggie. These beer parties here. So to this day, I mean, that came up again because of them having a back and forth on Twitter. Like, yo, I'll bring up what happened years ago. So there are two sides. So
it's always like I'll drop files type of thing.
So the sort of Y Combinator, so this is the biggest startup accelerator in the world. They accelerated Uber, they accelerated Airbnb. So their camp don't like David Sachs. They got a chance, your Paul Grahams, they got a chance to, your Gary Chans, they got a chance to come out and say, David Sachs is the most evil dude in Silicon Valley. I called one of my other friends who knows a lot of evil people. We know David Sachs is the most evil guy, and he's talking about like, yo, the Zenefit story was clear. So Parker sort of got the last laugh because he started a company called Rippling. Okay. And Rippling is sort of, because Zenefits ended up failing dismally when David Sachs was successful with his coup, and then he became CEO, and then the company failed, and then Parker started Rippling, which kind of did the same thing, and that's a very successful company to this day. So he kind of got the last laugh in that context. But the back and forth, the tiff is still going on to this day, right? This is something that happened 2015, 20. So it was funny for me how, like, these are probably people between 40 and 50 something, because these are guys that came out of the tech boom. They are not kids anymore now. But they're talking about things that happened probably at their peak, 20-something. But now they're old. And I'm just like, pettiness does not die, right? If I'm your hater, like if I'm 50 Cent in your Ja Rule, I'll buy tickets to your concert so no one attends. So that was interesting. And then the last thing...
Wow, Mesh, I thought that was the last thing. Like, I thought, like...
yeah, that's the last thing, actually. You're right.
He came with the whole list. I was on you for coming with the script. You came with the whole script.
Yeah, that was the other thing that I wanted to say is fine. I wanted to just talk about how CrowdStrike gave their clients $10 gift cards. So people were pissed at that.
Yeah, but I mean...
Like, that's undermining us. For
the
shutting down
inconvenience you caused.
For a few hours on a business
even
day.
Just looking at Capitec from a South African context, if you look at people who use Capitec, these are people when they like probably a lower LSM than people who use all the other banks. They really depend on that thing. You can see the Capitec lines, even if that, like, the charge that they charge is, like, compared to the other banks is not that different. But, like, you'll see the Capitec people loyal to that brand and sticking it out. So I can even imagine how much, like, of an inconvenience it caused to those kind of people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just from a South African context, I guess. So, yeah. Thanks for that, Mesh. It's a whole list of things to go through.
A little rant.
Yes, actually, we should call it Mesh's rant, like, going forward. Not even, like, what are you tapped into?
But this is literally what I've been... And this is not even everything, to be honest. And this is what I've been... Because obviously now there's, like, transfer links and football. So I've been tapped into that as well. The Olympics are about to start, so I can keep going. Like
it brings me back to.
But this is like real life.
We spoke about the previous episode, like when we said like we should actually have a psychiatrist or psychologist to just come and chill with us for like an episode, because I'd really like to understand what's going on in your head. It's like there's like multiple files open. And there is work being done here, work being done
there,
and it's not even
I'll try to attach it. My brain's like an internet browser. Yeah. I got so many tabs open and there's music playing in the background.
My mind is like an internet browser. I have 19 tabs, 3 of them are frozen, and I don't know where the music is coming from.
One thing about Mesh is every time I meet him, like, you learn so much.
Exactly.
In 30 minutes, I learn probably the syllabus of an engineering course.
Crash course. Mesh rent equals to a crash course.
After this, I have a qualification.
But anyway, what have you been tapped into? What's been going on in your world?
I think for me, the first thing that it also touches on what Mesh said. I found it very interesting that Justice Maya is now the first female Chief Justice. I think to me, it speaks to our progressive realization of equality in the country, where we're seeing women being elevated and also being given positions of power. And very interesting is that it also comes at the eve of our National Women's Day, which is on the 9th of August. So that is.
Do you think it's do you think it's too late? Oh, not too late, but do you think it took a lot more time than it was supposed to take? Or do you think we're on the right progression, like we're steady moving in the right progression?
I think we're steady moving in the right direction, particularly looking at the fact that it's not easy for people in power to let go of power. And also it's not so easy that we see real change so fast, but this is a step in the right direction. We've seen also with other powerful positions within the country, the public protector position, there has most women being in charge of that. And now we're also seeing also in the legislature, which is largely dominated by men, then we're seeing women also rising through those structures. And now we have the entire Chief Justice being a female. That's all. So that speaks to our progressive realization, particularly when it comes to equality on a gender basis.
Yeah, I think I don't even have to say anything on that. I was super stoked because
I would want to hear your opinion as like you're the only person. I don't know about you, but like you're the only person like between me and Lloyd, at least that's like in sort of the legal realm.
in this space.
Yeah.
No,
and you're female, you know.
Look,
so
I was when the previous round happened and Chief Justice Zondo kind of got appointed. There was a lot of back and forth. People were not really happy about that. I was like, I was
considering the fact that she actually was the recommended
recommended candidate. Exactly. Yeah. So I was part of the people who were just like a bit sus about the situation because I was like, here's that's why I actually asked the question earlier of whether you think it's kind of happening at a steady pace, you agree with the pace that is going, or it's a little bit delayed? Because I kind of feel like it's a little bit delayed. I think it should have came in a little bit sooner because even in the previous time, she was recommended. She seemed to be the most qualified candidate. Why didn't she get it? You know what I mean? But I'm super stoked. I'm super happy that she actually got it. It's a big win for us. A big win for not just for like women in this country, but also for just the progression of the country, to what you spoke into, that we're actually seeing Black women who are qualified getting the positions that they deserve. So, halala for that. Anything else, sir, that's on your mind that you saw that was interesting?
I think also touching on the same topic, now that we're approaching also Women's Day, it's also a good time to also reflect and commemorate the journey that the country has actually gone under. Earlier, I saw pictures of the march that was held I think it was in 1956, if I'm not mistaken, with Raima Musa, Lillian Goyi, as well as, what was her name? I keep forgetting her name.
Yeah, that test I was as well because even me, I'm like blank. But yeah.
Helen Joseph. Yes. So those are the three women that actually led the march, where they were demanding that women have equal rights to men. And today, even though they are no longer with us, the dream they had many years ago, that dream is suddenly coming to realization. Their effort didn't go to waste.
Do you think it was strategic to have it announced on the eve of Women's Day?
Yes. My short answer will always be yes. I mean, we need to find a way to celebrate the occasion differently. Okay. And sometimes we want a celebratory event that is no longer just words or PR, where we are having countless speeches, but we're actually seeing action. That women are afforded an opportunity, the same opportunity that would be afforded to a man.
I totally agree with that. I do feel like there's a long way we need to go, especially with women who are in power, who need to kind of speak out a little bit more. I think if I just think about something that's on my head right now is the gender-based violence in this country, and there's a minister of women and children who, honestly, I don't know who that is. I should probably go and look it up. But given the state of GBV in this country, I would hope that they would come in a little bit more in the forefront, speak a little bit more about it, elevate those issues a little bit more, you know what I mean? Especially even in this month You know what I'm saying? I would like to see a lot of more action in that front as well, just happening, because there's a lot of issues that need to be unpacked, that need to be solved, that people need to actually get into. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
What have I been tapped into, guys? I'm not going to be long, but there's...
Lloyd, are you done?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
actually
that was his last thing.
that was the one thing that actually made my week, made my year.
Okay, we like an ally. So I saw there was a whole uproar about Miss SA, and it was all for like the wrong reasons. To be fair, before I even get into it, I was just so I was so defeated because I didn't feel the need that this conversation was. I didn't feel like it was right to have that conversation, to even bring it up, because there's a lady who joined Miss SA, just for background. Her father is from Nigeria, her mom is from South Africa. I think she grew up in Soweto as well. And the conversation was whether she should be allowed to enter Miss SA because she is not, she is mixed. So her dad is not from South Africa, she's from Nigeria, her mom is South African. And for me, that whole conversation was just like it's so dead. If we're still having, it's a representation of where people are in the country.
Do you think, sorry for cutting you, do you think South Africans, this is something that always bugs me, because we're faced with a situation now in Cape Town where housing prices are inflated by tourists, right? That even overstay their visas in some cases, allegedly. So do you think that's South Africa? Because you never hear anyone talking about them being illegal.
Yeah.
So do you think, and just white people in general, if a white girl, Afrikaans speaking girl wins Miss SA, no one's gonna have a problem about her origins.
Yeah.
You know, so but they're probably not even African, right? So do you think South Africans are Afrophobic or they're xenophobic? Because I always hear South Africans are xenophobic, South Africans are xenophobic, but I don't see it, right? I don't see us hating on any other races. I mean, sometimes, yes, some people will be pissed at the Pakistanis or, well, my friend, you get me? But there's never really as much outrage for other races as we are outraged with Africans.
No, I think, look, Mesh, I think it's, because I was going to get to the Afrophobia thing, right? I think people that complain about this, complain about what they're exposed to a lot more. So if you think about people that are in kind of the lower LSM, they're probably in the townships or in communities that are not as well in terms of money. They're not so, you don't see a lot of white people in those spaces. So they don't interact as much with white people in those spaces. What they're more exposed to is the people from mostly the African countries that come into those spaces. So their anger is probably more directed to that because that's closer to them. That's the one thing. The second thing is also with the guys from Pakistani and the people that we call out my friend, which is ironic, by the way. But it's I think they also face, attacks when there's strikes against their little businesses, people looting. They face that whole backlash on that. I just think that to have a conversation of, because somebody has parents from, one of their parents is from a different country, and make that a reason why they shouldn't enter a competition or they shouldn't represent South Africa. I just find it wild because
they're basically saying that this is not the right face of South Africa. I don't follow pageants, but isn't that why someone wins Miss South Africa? This is the face of our country for this year.
Yeah.
So they don't want that to be a representation of the face. But we wouldn't have a problem with that face being white for a year.
We don't even investigate it, which is kind of where I was coming from, in the sense that we are more likely to investigate it because we are more exposed to the African brothers or sisters that come from other countries in the local communities. So we're more aware of it. And when we see somebody who's mixed like that, we're more like, let's fight it. But if it's a white person, we don't actually, if you think about a general person, and I might be wrong, you can correct me, but I think a general person who lives in a township, a village, does not necessarily go into the intricacies of thinking about a white person who probably was born in South Africa, but their parents are German or Australian. I don't think it's as
It's like
prevalent.
crabs in a bucket mentality.
Yeah.
Like, there's the world out there, but like we're just like crabs.
We're
that
not
are-
really exposed
and
to
we're-
it as
yeah.
much, so we don't think about, when we look at a white person, you just think, they're probably Afrikaans. There's Afrikaans
It's not even a
speaking.
problem that comes
or-
up because you're not confronted
Yeah,
by it.
yeah,
You
you're
know,
not
you don't
confronted
even
every day.
see white people.
Exactly. You're not confronted by that problem every day. However, with a black person, because you live in that community, you are more like, hey,
Yeah,
you
they're
know,
taking my
like, you
job.
think about it a little bit. But for me, it was just exhausting to have that conversation, because I feel like then we'd have to go into every other person that has ever represented South Africa and look at their origins. And some of the people that we're most proud of are actually mixed, or their parents come from different countries, or even just us as Venda people. Are we going to now say because Venda was a republic, we can't represent South Africa? You know what I mean?
But also, what defines your identity? Getting- I
Right.
always get backlash because I'm quote unquote Venda, but my surname is Sutu, right?
Yeah.
Like my origins, I know, but like my great granddad had to change our surname because of tribalism.
Right.
So
Exactly.
maybe like we haven't made the conscious decision to say let's change back. Maybe we're just not brave enough because this is the identity we've held for so
For
long.
so long.
But what is identity?
We're all
then?
diluted, fam. That's my
What is the
stance.
identity? Like
I think at the end of the day, the biggest win should be she's African. I mean, at the end of the day-
Exactly.
dude,
Or
every
even
single day, right? We lose more than 10 languages. Like they get extinct.
Shucks.
Right? So
Shucks.
so like I even saw this post about how, I don't know how true this is, you can fact check, but like how every sort of 1,000 years a language, like the level at which a language is evolved, it's basically a new language. So if you speak English,
Yeah,
if you
true,
go to
actually.
if you go to England
think
1,000 years ago, you wouldn't even hear a word they were saying.
So
Like
now,
if we just
exactly.
put you, if we just threw you there, so it's like every other aspect we're evolving, right? I've been so steadfast on like I want my kids to be Venda speaking, but I just know it's not gonna be at the level
We
that
are
I
ev-
spoke
we
Venda
are
at, right?
evolving, and
I'm like I was raised ngangoma yabate.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to make the effort to like? I'm you know,
True,
like, am I gonna make
true.
the effort to like teach my
your
child
kids that.
the intricacies around ngoma yabate? You know,
And what
so-
if your child doesn't speak Chivenda? Is she not allowed to represent South Africa? Or is he not allowed to represent South Africa in any way because they can't speak the language?
What if its mother is Angolan?
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's such a I think we need to get to a point where we understand this is where we are as a country. We are all mixed. We are living in this space. We're evolving, and part of that like growth, and it's gonna involve us mixing with other cultures, and it's gonna lead to other greater things, other whole different language might come up from all this mixture that's currently happening. A whole new community might come up from it. So I just think we shouldn't shy away from that as a country. And also we should also take this is a learning opportunity to see how much the country still needs to be educated, how much we still need to grow in some aspects of the growth of the country and the involvement of the country. Because if we're still having people complaining about a black woman who just entered Miss South Africa because her dad is not from South Africa, even though she was born and raised here, it just shows how, little progression we've done in that space, So yeah,
I mean,
that's
she's more South African than she's
Than most
whatever
people.
her mother is. You
Then-
know, like
Yeah.
she's more South African than a South African that was born and raised in the States. Right?
Right.
So like,
And also,
yeah.
if your child is born in the state, to maybe you get married to a South African woman, you move to the States, and your child is born there, and they want to compete in the NBA or whatever, are you gonna be like, no, they shouldn't compete?
this is reserved for the Americans.
This is reserved for the Americans, or or they want to enter Miss USA. Shouldn't they do it because now you're not American? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of education we need to do in that front. It was bugging my mind a lot that we were actually having that conversation, because in my small little mind, I thought we are progressing a little bit more. So yeah. Anyway,
What else have
Moving
you been
average.
tapped into? What else?
oh yeah,
Is that all?
that is what I've been tapped into. That's what's been top of my mind. I was even thinking about it when I was getting here. So yeah, that's me. I think though we should still touch on that conversation that we had last week on Makazi and her owing SARS, and actually just kind of tap into that knowledge that you are here for, which is the main reason why you are here.
I
Actually,
think that's a great place to start. Like, what role does someone, because that's different because they're managing an artist, right? And most times the artists don't really understand like that kind of system, how it works, how to ensure that everything is in like is sort of like documented right, and they make the right payment. So what are your thoughts? What are your overall thoughts with Makazi's situation, but like just the situation with creatives in general and them managing taxes? We see a lot of platforms also that are coming up to help creatives, like people working in the gig economy, freelancers. There's a lot of that growing. So how do you think they can properly manage, or what do you think is the responsibility of someone that's guiding them with their taxes?
I will not opine on Makazi's situation, but however, what I can do is maybe just to speak a little bit about what would be the tax obligations of someone who's in the creative industry, particularly because I think that is an industry that is far divorced from finance. Particularly because finance, we know it's a suit-up kind of people, and then the creatives are slightly a little bit different from us within finance. So one of the first few things was understanding the fact that for the mere fact that you are a South African resident, or if you're a non-resident, the mere fact that you generate a South African income, you then become liable for tax, right? So and then by tax here, I'm referring to income tax. So now, in the space of creatives, they do not get like regular payments, right? So what needs to happen is that they register as provisional taxpayers. So with that, they pay their tax upfront every 6 months. And then at the end of the year, when they submit the final tax returns, a final tax liability is computed. And then the difference between what they've already paid upfront via their provisional tax mechanism, together with what the tax liability ultimately is then the difference they would need to pay at the end of the year. So let me take a little bit step backwards in terms of, so how does that differ from a normal person who's an employee, a salaried person? So our tax obligation is an annual obligation. So tax is an annual obligation. The income tax is an annual obligation that will be computed once every year. So every individual would then have a year of assessment, which is a financial year in which we calculate your taxes for that particular year, runs from the 1st of March each year and ends the 28th, or if it's a leap year, 29th February the following year. Like 2024 is actually a leap year. Then,
yeah, my nephew got to celebrate his birthday for the first time in 4 years. Anyway, to your point,
a
sorry.
good way to save money. No cake every year. But anyway, so every year they would need to be assessed on the income that they've generated in that particular year, right? And then now we make payments towards that annual tax obligation at the end of the year. Those that are salaried would then get what they've seen in their pay slips, written pay as you earn. So that is also an estimation of your final tax liability, and then you're prepaying that tax upfront every month. So what sometimes does happen is that artists or creatives are not aware, one, that they are obliged to register as provisional taxpayers, right? Which means that because you don't get like an employee where you can then be on the pay-as-you-earn regime, you then need to then pay up your taxes every 6 months. So what happens is either they don't register, they do register, but they don't make any payments. So therefore, what happens is that later it catches up with you. That, you know, you've been enjoying all of this income for the past 5 years. However, there's no tax that you've actually paid. And when that is actually calculated back, it then becomes this big number. Another thing that happens is that there are penalties and interest that is also then levied on that tax debt. So you get a penalty you get an underestimation penalty. So what an underestimation penalty is for a provisional taxpayer is that because you didn't submit a return, SARS assumed you submitted a return with nil. You submitted a zero return. Therefore, you get a penalty for underestimating your revenue or your income at that particular year. So you would get an underestimation penalty. Therefore, every month that you haven't paid your tax debt, you then incur interest that is then levied. So those that they build up to then create a big number that you eventually owe SARS. So the responsibility of a creative would be to hire a tax practitioner. hire a tax practitioner, have an accountant, have someone that manages your financial affairs, not just from doing taxes, but also looking into how do you then run or manage your finances. You can get a wide range of financial individuals. You could get all sorts of other financial advice. They don't necessarily need to come from the same person, but creatives then have that responsibility to ensure that you look after your finances, get the right people with the sufficient skill, knowledge, and experience to be able to help you with your particular situation.
Got it. So I'm just thinking, right? Like in this day and age we're living in, there's a lot of creatives who are not in the traditional sense, like a performer or like an actress. They're on TikTok. They are on Instagram. They are content creators, and they get money from there, so they generate that income. I'm assuming they would have the same obligation, but I'm wondering how can they? I mean, as a person that's just starting out, you don't have money to probably hire a tax practitioner, maybe, or maybe you're not kind of familiar with how to get one or whatever. How can I, as a person who is a creative in that space, who's just coming up, I'm just starting with my little TikTok, where do I start to look in terms of my obligations and what I need to be doing?
Yeah.
Can I just add on to that? Also, you don't have you mentioned something about the provisional, paying in advance. So you don't even have foresight of how much you're going to make, right? Your job is very random, right? You might have this video that pops and is trending 3 months in and it makes you so much money, or you might get an endorsement deal for 1 month. So how do you work around not having that foresight of even how much you're going to make?
I would have said higher profit, but in any case,
Not a profit,
bro.
They will go deeper and find out.
Okay.
But
I see what
anyways,
you
jokes
did
aside, there's actually a way in which we project that particular income.
Okay.
So within in the South African Income Tax Act, we then have within the fourth schedule a manner in which we calculate provisional tax, right? I won't get into the technicalities of how that's done, but your tax practitioner should be able to assist you with that handling of how to calculate that particular thing. So now another thing that I'd want to also then look into is just try to explain the nuances that exist between a normal individual, a salaried employee versus a freelancer, a TikTok content creator, YouTuber, etc., etc. Right?
Wink.
So now, the one, I'll just quickly summarize: an employee, a salaried person, right? Your annual tax obligation, if you don't have any other investments and any other things that could have a change within your annual tax income, will just mostly be your salary, and that will be what will be taxed, right? And then you're not running any business, right? However, when it comes to people that are then on the other side where they are content creators, we can then assume that in our language, in tax, we would call it you're running a trade, right?
Okay.
When you're running a trade, you are then allowed to deduct certain expenses that you would have incurred in the process of you producing that particular video, producing that particular... So that becomes in itself a business, whether incorporated or not, right?
Interesting.
So you could incorporate it, you could get a PTY LTD, and then you'd run everything under that, and you invoice through the company, and then it will be taxed under the company's tax regime. Or you could be running it in your own personal capacity, and then you will be taxed in your own personal capacity. However, their situation works a little bit different, because now when you're running a business, you then get taxed on the profit, versus a salaried person is taxed on the salary, because you're not running a business, right?
Got it. So they can actually, say I'm a content creator and I have a mic, I have a ring light that I've bought, it's expensive, and I've got this, all this expensive equipment around me. I can actually take that into account and say, okay, I've used this equipment, this is how much it has cost me, I qualify for this amount of reduction.
Yes, very true. So that you're allowed to take into account into your tax, because you only need to be taxed on the profit, because you're running a business, right? Whether incorporated or not. So the only difference will be the rate at which the tax will be. In a company, the tax will then be taxed at 27%, which is a standard rate for companies. And then, however, if you do draw a salary from that business that you're running, you would then need to deduct pay as you earn as well, unfortunately. And then you'd need to pay that tax as well. So you then be taxed on the company and taxed as an employee as well. However, the tax that's on the company would be on the remaining profits after you've deducted your salary. And then your salary will be taxed under the employee's tax regime. If you then run it in your own personal capacity, you're still taxed on profit. However, now there's a progressive tax table that actually applies to you.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
could you please just give context or recommend which one is better for what kind of individual, even if that's an amount? Like if you're making this much, you're better off now just having a business, paying yourself, or don't do that yet. If you don't have this much, you're better off just just working as yourself and not operating under an entity.
I would say, okay, the first clear benefit would be, okay, if you're running as an individual, the progressive tax table starts at about 95,750 for the 2024 year of assessment, right? So if you make anything below that, it's not taxable, right? Versus in a company, it's a flat 27% that you would need to be taxed on, unless if you are an exempted micro business, but we won't get into that. So ideally, if you're starting out, obviously maybe that, but at the end of the day, they all come somewhat to the same place, right? And that's the nature of the tax legislation, or how the tax regime is actually set up, is that we have anti-avoidance rules that make sure that everything is pari passu.
Okay, cool.
Everything is equal. Everything
Okay.
is treated equally, particularly to avoid instances of tax avoidance. So no matter how you might try to run to the one thing or leave the other thing out, somewhat the anti-avoidance rules will catch up with you, and then you'll find yourself in the same kind of position. So yeah,
Interesting.
content creators out there need to get yourself a tax practitioner, get yourself a person who can assist you, particularly in that sense, because you don't want to go 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and then all of these things are now coming to catch up with you, because they will catch up with you. You might go free for 1, 2 years, and then no one's running after you, but eventually you will fall under SARS's radar, and when they want the money, they want it now.
That is such a scary chat. Like, it makes me feel like I need to start go and look into my things. I have a question though for young professionals, right? They're working, they're salaried, and but all of us kind of have this kind of side hustle thing that's kind of going on. We are YouTubers, podcasters, we are content creators, we have, we're selling clothes, we're doing something to just supplement our salaries, right? What are obligations that I would have as a young professional who kind of has all the side hustles that I'm working on the side?
Okay. So all of those are actually all taxable, right? So all income sources would be taxable, apart from those that are clearly excluded, right, within our tax regime. But most likely, all of your side hustles will then be taxable, right? So what that means is that, one, either did you incorporate it within a company, then it will fall under the company's tax regime. So your revenues less the expenses that you've incurred to actually create that revenue, you get a deduction, and then at the profit is what's taxed. And then if you make a loss, the losses then roll forward to the next year. So you will be able to deduct this year's loss in next year's profits. However, recently you've been limited to only 80% of the loss that you can roll forward to the next year. So let's say you run through 5 years of making losses, so those losses will continue moving around, but only 80% of them is moving forward. And the year you make a profit, you can deduct all of those losses, right? Okay. So the idea is to eventually tax you on the economic profit, company's tax regime. However, if you're then running all of these things, you're selling clothes in your own personal capacity, then now you're also running a trade, but under your own personal capacity, you're still allowed to deduct those expenses that you incur in order for you to generate that revenue. However, it then gets muddled up with your income, right? And when it gets muddled up in your income, it will then form a much larger taxable income, and that taxable income will then be taxed according to the progressive tax table. So now what then happens with a lot of people is that they don't declare, right? So what would need to happen is that when you do fill in the tax return, now it's tax season, when you do fill in the tax return, you would need to declare all of these other incomes, because most likely they're not in SARS's radar and would not have automatically popped up on your IT-12 return, right? However, now it's then the time for you to then declare that you've then done this. This is your incomes, the expenditures, and the allowable deductions or any capital allowances that you can get. And then the profit is what will then be taxable according to the progressive tax table, because you're then running this trade in your own personal capacity. So that is what then happens with those things. So now what you would then also need to understand is that you will have additional responsibilities now. Because you then run these side hustles, you might need to register as a provisional taxpayer for the other stuff that you're doing, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And then now you'll be both a pay as you earn type of person, because you then have those payroll deduction of the tax. And then now also in that side hustle, in that business, you would need to pay provisional tax. And remember, provisional tax is not a tax, but a prepayment of your final tax obligation, where at the end of the day, when we compute your tax return, we get the amount that you then owe and then subtract what you've prepaid.
Okay, got it. So say now I'm listening to this podcast and I've figured, okay, cool, I need to get a tax practitioner to actually help me out with this. I need to kind of take hold of my finances and all of that. Where do I get your services to actually help me out with the situation?
Yeah. So basically, you can contact us through our website, through any of our social media pages, Posaito Consulting Services. You can also contact us. We also have a number which we can put down below.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can send us a WhatsApp. You can send us an email. Our email is info@posaito.co.za. So I myself am a registered tax practitioner with a registered tax practice number, and that's what one would need to also look into when you want to verify whether someone is what they are. After Dr. Matthew, we all need to verify. We all need to do our homework. Yeah, so I'm willing to then assist where people need assistance.
Thanks, Lloyd. Mesh, do you have any questions for Lloyd?
Do you think Lobola would be like a dope sort of vehicle to launder money?
I thought you were going somewhere else. Okay.
Okay, I'm not much of an expert in.
Yeah, I'm not saying be a criminal. I'm just like saying out loud. I think it's an interesting thing.
It could, particularly because then now you are receiving the source of this large amount of money, and then the
source is
you don't know where the source comes from, and you just go boom, you bring it to the bank. That's the only other issue you'll have to face, is that when you bring it to the bank, if you're going to bring it to the bank, you need to explain, Mr. Mulife, where do you get 500,000?
Oh, I got it from so and so.
No. But like, this is the person that received it, right? Mm-hmm. They're saying, this is, the family, right? If I'm getting married, I'm going to pay to my wife's family, right? And then her dad's going to take that money to the bank. I've spoken to the dad, but like, he's taking the 5 million to the bank.
Person get their money back?
What person? Me. That's my father-in-law, man.
Because for you to successfully launder money, you need to take it through a system, and then
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. I have cash, right? I generated this cash illegally, right? And then I'm getting married, right? I marry a girl. They charge me 5 million, right? But we're cleaning that money. But I give my dad-in-law, I pay my dad-in-law 5 million cash.
Yeah.
Yes,
right? Are they gonna probe her dad on? No. Wait. Are they gonna probe her dad on where the money was? Are they so intricate where they're gonna probe her dad on where the money was withdrawn?
They have to find out where the dad got the money.
He's gonna say, I got it from my son-in-law.
And then they're gonna have to look into that person, because 5 million. I think there's also a threshold of how much you can actually have. So 5 million, if as an example,
I don't know,
is a little bit steep.
I think it's a great idea.
But also think about this.
But it's a one-off transaction. So I would understand. I would think that if someone is laundering money, it would need something repetitive. Because then, unless if you're doing this,
I'm just
there's
saying
also a cash
test
roll that you can actually get. So I think right now it's like 49,999 that you can actually take as a bank for somebody to bring the cash in there. So they can't even take 5 million as cash without reporting it to the FIG. You know what I mean?
But there isn't a threshold that exists for how much I can marry a girl for.
There isn't.
Right?
But that's
a rule that can be. It's like saying, they like the biggest company in the world, right? The biggest company might be a $4 trillion company today, but a few years from now, it could be a $10 trillion company, right? We're talking about space mining the other day. Like once someone figures out how to mine in space, it changes the trajectory of how we view an individual in terms of their net worth. So that's what I'm saying. Like it could be, this person, I'm saying, wouldn't that be something that where you can play, if you're someone who wants to play around with the system, wouldn't that be a point, something that you can contend on? Because there isn't really a threshold for how much I can get married, or how much I can marry someone for. I mean, obviously it would be something very easy to figure out, because if they do the due diligence, then I would need to account, right?
But I mean, the structures within our banking system allow for that due diligence to actually happen. I guess the only loophole would be if the family kind of divides the money in small chunks, and within every uncle has a bit of this.
Where there's a will, there's a way. That's what I believe.
That's crazy.
But why is now son-in-law's money going through so many people?
I mean, families do that. Hey, there's a lot of structuring that actually happens in those transactions, which could actually trigger money laundering and anti-money laundering regulations.
Interesting twist to this criminality talk you guys are having. Even criminal proceeds are taxable. So it doesn't matter how you got the money. All that matters is that you need to give Caesar what is Caesar's.
I actually, and
but I get it, because Saul's role isn't to be
investigating these things. Yeah,
their
role is to get
there
money.
are people that are responsible for that.
For sure.
For the illicit financial flows.
For sure. Anyway, we're about to close up. We're literally at the end of the show. I have to ask this bi-weekly ask, which, is a thing we do here. Every week we ask each other a weekly question, and then the other person has to answer. We don't know which question that other person is going to ask. We just throw it in the air. So my question for this week is to you guys is, if you were given one wish, and with this one wish you could change one thing in the world, you're not using it for yourself, you're changing it for the entire world, what would you change? Quick, guys, rapid.
I would get rid of poverty.
Okay, get rid of poverty.
I mean, that's my lifetime goal. Like, go on anything. Get a leaked version of my first CV. My bio has, my lifetime mission is to contribute to illiteracy in Africa and ending poverty. So yeah.
Great.
Maybe if Lloyd, if we both got it, Lloyd would end poverty. I'd just make sure everyone can read and write.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Anyway, did you have something to say, Lloyd?
No, I think we'll carry it there.
Okay.
Yeah, hope to have you.
Regular as a friend of this show, because we need more friends in this show.
I'll be coming back.
Okay, you have it there. As a token,
your wish
is our command, fam.
I said
that. Just to say thank you for coming to see us and for imparting the knowledge that you did. We have a little gift from Untapped.
That's interesting.
So we've got something in here for you.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
To take home. And, to think about us in the future so that you come back. You think about it a little bit more. And you this guy gave me a gift. Let me go back and impart more knowledge. That's just our token of appreciation to say thank you for coming and for, adhering to this madness that happens in this place. But also, again, sharing the knowledge that you did share. Mesh, anything you want to say before we tap out?
Yeah, the author of the book we got is John Lloyd. So that's interesting. It's called The Power and the Story. It's the global battle for news and information. So I think that's something that would be interesting for you. It goes into modern geopolitics, the Trump presidency, delusion, realness. So I think that would be something that's interesting. Maybe you could also just show everyone the shirt, That's a Maureen.
This is so cool.
Yeah, Untapped Azania shirt. That's a Maureen inspired shirt. So if you guys go back to the trailer, Maureen is like, another podcast at the end because people are pissed that like people launching
starting
podcasts.
podcasts
So this is
again.
another podcast that Lloyd just,
He was just-
came to. So,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And
yeah.
I'm really honored to have been part of this. Learned so much from Mesh's rant earlier. I'm like, I should have brought my diary. I need to take notes.
We should have a section called Mesh Rent. I feel
like
it.
when
I feel
just
it.
come and take notes.
Maybe
but
when you start doing skits.
For sure, actually. Anyway, peace out for the...
Peace out.
We outie.